Hello, I'm going to read you from the first chapter of The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. It's called The Riverbank. The mole had been working very hard all morning, spring cleaning his little home. First with brooms, then with dusters, then on ladders and steps and chairs, with a brush and a pail of whitewash, till he had dust in his throat and eyes and splashes of whitewash all over his black fur and an aching back and weary arms. Spring was moving in the air above and in the earth below and around him, penetrating even his dark and lowly little house with its spirit of divine discontent and longing. It was small wonder then that he suddenly flung down his brush on the floor and said, "Bother!" and "Oh, blow!" and "Hang spring cleaning!" and bolted out of the house without even waiting to put on his coat. So he scraped and scratched and scrabbled and scrooged, and then he scrooged again and scrabbled and scratched and scraped, working busily with his little paws and muttering to himself, "Up we go, up we go, up we go," till at last, pop! His snout came out into the sunlight, and he found himself rolling in the warm grass of a great meadow. "This is fine," he said to himself. "This is better than whitewashing." Jumping off all his 4 legs at once, in the joy of living and the delight of spring without its cleaning, he pursued his way across the meadow till he reached the hedge on the further side. It all seemed too good to be true. Hither and thither through the meadows he rambled busily, along the hedgerows, across the copses, finding everywhere birds building, flowers budding, leaves thrusting, everything happy and progressive and occupied. And instead of having an uneasy conscience pricking him and whispering, "Whitewash," he somehow could only feel how jolly it was to be the only idle dog among all those busy citizens. After all, the best part of a holiday is perhaps not so much to be resting yourself as to see all the other fellows busy working. He thought his happiness was complete when, as he meandered aimlessly along, suddenly he stood by the edge of a full-fed river. Never in his life had he seen a river before. This sleek, sinuous, full-bodied animal, chasing and chuckling, gripping things with a gurgle and leaving them with a laugh to fling itself on fresh playmates that shook themselves free and were caught and held again. All was a shake and a shiver, glints and gleams and sparkles, rustle and swirl, chatter and bubble. The mole was bewitched, entranced, fascinated. As he sat on the grass and looked across the river, a dark hole in the bank opposite, just above the water's edge, caught his eye. As he gazed, something bright and small seemed to twinkle down in the heart of it, vanished, then twinkled once more like a tiny star. But it could hardly be a star in such an unlikely situation. It was too glittering and small for a glowworm. Then, as he looked, it winked at him, and so declared itself to be an eye. And a small face began gradually to grow up round it, like a frame round a picture. A little brown face with whiskers. A grave round face with the same twinkle in its eye that had first attracted his notice. Small neat ears and thick silky hair. It was the water rat. Then the 2 animals stood and regarded each other cautiously. "Hello, Mole," said the water rat. "Hello, Rat," said the mole. "Would you like to come over?" inquired the rat presently. "Oh, it's all very well to talk," said the mole, rather pettishly, he being new to a river and riverside life and its ways. The rat said nothing, but stooped and unfastened a rope and hauled on it, then lightly stepped into a little boat which the mole had not observed. The boat was painted blue outside and white within, and was just the size for the two animals. And the mole's whole heart went out to it at once, even though he did not yet fully understand its uses. The rat sculled smartly across and made fast. Then he held up his forepaw as the mole stepped gingerly down. "Lean on that," he said. "Now then, step lively." And the mole, to his surprise and rapture, found himself actually seated in the stern of a boat. "This has been a wonderful day," said he, as the rat shoved off and took to the sculls again. "Do you know, I've never been in a boat before in all my life." "What?" cried the rat, open-mouthed. "Never been in... You never... Well, what have you been doing then?" "Is it so nice as all that?" asked the mole shyly, though he was quite prepared to believe it, as he leant back in his seat and surveyed the cushions, the oars, the rowlocks, and all the fascinating fittings, and felt the boat sway lightly under him. "Nice? It's the only thing," said the water rat solemnly, as he leant forward for his stroke. "Believe me, my young friend, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as simply messing about in boats. Simply messing," he went on dreamily, "messing about in boats. Messing..." "Look out, rat!" cried the mole suddenly. It was too late. The boat struck the bank full tilt. The dreamer, the joyous oarsman, lay on his back at the bottom of the boat, his heels in the air. "About in boats. Oh, with boats," the rat went on composedly, picking up himself with a pleasant laugh. "In or out of 'em, it doesn't matter. Nothing seems really to matter. That's the charm of it. Whether you get away or whether you don't. Whether you arrive at your destination or whether you reach somewhere else. Or whether you never get anywhere at all. You're always busy, and you never do anything in particular. And when you've done it, there's always something else to do. And you can do it if you like, but you'd much better not. Look here. If you've really nothing else on hand this morning, supposing we drop down the river together and have a long day of it." The mole waggled his toes from sheer happiness, spread his chest with a sigh of full contentment, and leaned back blissfully into the soft cushions. "What a day I'm having," he said. "Let's start at once." "Hold hard a minute then," said the rat. He looped the painter through a ring in his landing stage, climbed up into his hole above, and after a short interval reappeared, staggering under a fat wicker luncheon basket. "Shove that under your feet," he observed to the mole as he passed it down into the boat. Then he untied the painter and took the sculls again. "What's inside it?" asked the mole, wriggling with curiosity. "There's cold chicken inside it," replied the rat briefly. "Cold tongue, cold ham, cold beef, pickled gherkins, salad, French rolls, cress sandwiches, potted meat, ginger beer, lemonade, soda water..." "Oh, stop, stop!" cried the mole in ecstasies. "This is too much." "Do you really think so?" inquired the rat seriously. "It's only what I always take on these little excursions." "I beg your pardon," said the mole, pulling himself together. "You must think me very rude, but all this is so new to me." "So this is a river?" "The river," corrected the rat. And do you really live by the river? What a jolly life! By it, and with it, and on it, and in it, said the rat. It's brother and sister to me, and aunts, and company, and food, and drink, and naturally washing. But isn't it a bit dull at times? The mole ventured to ask. Just you and the river, and no one else to pass a word with? No one else to... Well, I mustn't be hard on you, said the rat with forbearance. You're new to it, and of course you don't know. Otters, kingfishers, dabchicks, moorhens, all of them about all day long, and always wanting you to do something, as if a fella had no business of his own to attend to. The rat hummed a tune, and after a while he said, well, I suppose we ought to be moving. I wonder which of us had better pack the luncheon basket. He did not speak, as if he was frightfully eager for the treat. Oh, please let me, said the mole. So, of course, the rat let him. The afternoon sun was getting low as the rat sculled gently homewards in a dreamy mood, murmuring poetry things over to himself and not paying much attention to Mole. But the mole was very full of lunch and self-satisfaction and pride, and already quite at home in a boat, so he thought, and was getting a bit restless. And presently he said, Ratty, please, I want to row now. The rat shook his head with a smile. Not yet, my young friend, he said. Wait till you've had a few lessons. It's not as easy as it looks. The mole was quiet for a minute or two, but he began to feel more and more jealous of Rat, sculling so strongly and so easily along, and his pride began to whisper that he could do it every bit as well. He jumped up and seized the sculls so suddenly that the rat, who was gazing out over the wall, was taken by surprise and fell backwards off his seat with his legs in the air for the second time, while the triumphant mole took his place and grabbed the sculls with entire confidence. "Stop it, you silly ass!" cried the rat from the bottom of the boat. "You can't do it, you'll have us over." The mole flung his sculls back with a flourish and made a great dig at the water. He missed the surface altogether. His legs flew up above his head, and he found himself lying on top of the prostrate rat. Greatly alarmed, he made a grab at the side of the boat, and the next moment, splosh! Over went the boat, and he found himself struggling in the river. Oh my, how cold the water was, and how very wet he felt. How it sang in his ears as he went down, down, down. How bright and welcome the sun looked as he rose to the surface, coughing and spluttering. How black was his despair when he felt himself sinking again. Then a firm paw gripped him by the back of his neck. It was the rat, and he was evidently laughing. The mole could feel him laughing right down his arm and through his paw, and so into his, the mole's, neck. The rat got hold of a skull and shoved it under the mole's arm. Then he did the same by the other side of him, and swimming behind, propelled the helpless animal to shore, hauled him out, and set him down on the bank, a squashy, pulpy lump of misery. When the rat had rubbed him down a bit and wrung some of his wet out of him, he said, "Now then, old fellow, trot up and down the towing path as hard as you can till you're warm and dry again, while I dive for the luncheon basket." So the dismal mole, wet without and ashamed within, trotted about till he was fairly dry, while the rat plunged into the water again, recovered the boat, righted her and made her fast, fetched his floating property to shore by degrees, and finally dived successfully for the luncheon basket and struggled to land with it. When all was ready for a start once more, the mole, limp and dejected, took his seat in the stern of the boat, and as they set off he said in a low voice, broken with emotion, "Ratty, my generous friend, I am very sorry indeed for my foolish and ungrateful conduct. My heart quite fails me when I think how I might have lost that beautiful luncheon basket. Indeed, I've been a complete ass and I know it. Will you overlook it this once and forgive me, and let things go on as before?" "That's all right, bless you," said the rat cheerily. "What's a little wet to a water rat? I'm more in the water than out of it most days. Don't you think any more about it. And look here, I really think you'd better come and stop with me for a little time. It's very plain and rough, you know, but I can make you comfortable, and I'll teach you to row and to swim, and you'll soon be as handy on the water as any of us." The mole was so touched by his kind manner of speaking that he could find no voice to answer, and he had to brush away a tear or two with the back of his paws. When they got home, the rat made a bright fire in the parlour and planted the mole in an armchair in front of it, having fetched down a dressing gown and slippers for him, and also told him river stories till supper time. Very thrilling stories they were too, to an earth-dwelling animal like mole. Stories about weirs and sudden floods and leaping pike, and about herons and how particular they were whom they spoke to, and about adventures down drains and night fishing with otter or excursions far afield with badger. Supper was a most cheerful meal, but very shortly afterwards the terribly sleepy mole had to be escorted upstairs by his considerate host to the best bedroom, where he soon laid his head on his pillow in great peace and contentment, knowing that his new-found friend the river was lapping the sill of his window. This day was only the first of many similar ones for the emancipated mole, each of them longer and fuller of interest as the ripening summer moved onwards. He learnt to swim and to row, and entered into the joy of running water, and with his ear to the reed stems he caught, at intervals, something of what the wind went whispering so constantly among them.